Good night, everyone. Good morning, wherever you are. Thanks for being here in this live. I'm going to move away to avoid much of the wind from affecting the sounds. But okay, it's me, Ari Dossett, just call me Rashid. I'm an anthropologist and zoologist over here. First thing first, can you all hear me clearly? Please let me know, please. Please let me know. Can you hear me clearly? Quite important. Let me know if you can hear me clearly, please. Thank you very much. Thank God there's not that much wind out here. All right. Langes that last is here. Mena is here too. Lishay is here. All that's here. Please report yourself in the live chat. Thank you very much. Okay. I can begin immediately with this. Communication. What is the difference between communication and aggression? Well, simply said, communication, as the term "com" in it comes from Latin for together. Communication is related to community. Okay, so communication is about community. Means you and a group of people, you work things out for each other's long-term benefit. That is communication. So communication has "com" in it, which means community. You arrange things with one another for the long-term benefit of the group, which includes the well-being of the group members also. That's communication. Aggression is when an individual or a group insists on an outcome regardless of the interests or the expectations of other people. That's aggression. Now, is aggression by default wrong? Not per se. If there are human rights violations going on in a country, you have this foreign NGO using aggression to expose the human rights violations, well, that is okay because there are human beings being harmed. You have this foreign organization that exposes the harm being done to force something to be done about it. In that case, aggression can be justified. Why? Because there's a good purpose for it. Aggression is not the same as violence. Violence is when you, on purpose, threaten with harm or you cause harm just because you're not challenged. Violence is never about achieving or getting anything done. Violence is about not being challenged. Think about it. If you walk into a supermarket, you put your groceries in the bags. Of course, you have to go to the cashier to pay for them before you leave. If you insist on leaving without paying, well, you can leave without paying, but you're called a shoplifter from that point on. They call the cops on you, and you may get a criminal record. Simple as that. Probably won't even leave the shop because security will come towards you. But what if you enter the supermarket with a big gun, fully loaded? They also have extra bullets with you. In that case, nobody's going to remind you need to pay for your groceries. They're not going to challenge you because challenge you may trigger you to use that gun. And nobody wants a gun to be used on them, so they'll let you go. So violence is all about avoiding being challenged. For example, a husband who has loose hands hitting his wife, he's doing that so that the wife never questions him why he's doing certain things. So violence is all about scaring people into not questioning you. So everything you say is good, all right, or you have a good reason for it. That's violence. So violence is never a necessary evil or the last resort. Violence is all about not being challenged. But you can only exercise violence on those who can't fight back. Because people can fight back and counter violence, use violence on them, and you'll regret it. So violence always used on those less fortunate than you who can't fight back or anything about it. All right? So aggression and violence are not the same. Well, aggression can turn violent, but it doesn't mean that aggression by itself is violence. Okay? Is it clear to you now the difference between aggression and violence? Is that clear? Let me know in the live chat, please. Let me know. Is the difference between aggression and violence clear onto you? Let me know in the live chat. I see Aaron is here, Nadine is here, Diane is here, Sherry is here, Joanne is here. Glad you're all here. So you can be aggressive without being violent. But violence is aggressive by default, but aggressive in a toxic and harmful way. All right? Now, a believer can be aggressive in the sense that, let's say that you have generational curses haunting you. You can be aggressive in prayer, decrees, and declarations, and in countering the generational curses. And before you know it, you're delivered, you're free. Or let's say that you insist in, let's say, if a police detective insisting on solving a case, he can be quite aggressive in interrogations. As long as he's not violating the suspects, he can be as aggressive as he wants to get the answers of the case. So aggression by itself is not automatically evil or wrong. Violence always is. Now, communication. Can communication become aggressive? Yes, it can. But often it's not, because in communication, you are interacting together. For communication, you both need to have the same language. If it's not the same language, how can you go to communicate? Besides the same language, there must be a common goal. You both want something. You both want a similar outcome. If I want to go to Ireland and you want to go to Greece on a vacation, I'm sorry, we both want to go on vacation, but two different destinations. There's no way to communicate about that. For communication, there must be a common purpose. For example, you all want the streets to be clean. You don't want trash all over the streets outside. You want streets to be clean. That would be a common thing in both of your benefits. So you can communicate about that. So for communication, there must be a common purpose that both of you can collaborate about. So get this. You have communication, which is community-based. People admit their own neediness and their own interdependence, and they collaborate together. You cannot communicate unless you're humble. Only humble people can communicate. Okay, repeat this in the live chat. Only humble people can communicate. Proud people violate. So write down the live chat. Only humble people can communicate. Proud people violate. Write that in the live chat, please. Repeat it. Only humble people can communicate. Violent people, let me say, only humble people can communicate. Proud people violate. Humble people can communicate. Proud people violate. Simple as that. You can even find this in the Old Testament, in the book of Proverbs, but it's written in a different way. It's quite simple. For you to communicate, you have to admit that you don't have all the answers. You have to admit you don't have all the power. You have to admit that you don't have all the resources. You have to admit that you don't have all the experience. You have to admit that you need other people to get things done. To communicate, you need to be humble, so you need to be realistic that you need teamwork. So that also means that you're willing to submit to the leadership of someone else and get it done. For example, let's say you're a businessman and you collaborate with another businessman to open up a mall. Now, can you build a mall by yourself with your bare hands? No. You need to hire people to build, hire an architect, you need to hire construction workers. So you need to submit also to what the construction workers are saying. If they're telling you, listen, sir, the mall you want to build is not going to be sustainable, then you have to adapt your plan. Simple as that. So even a businessman out there know that they need to concede where necessary to get something done. So for communication, you have to be realistic and admit your vulnerability so that you can operate in a team. Simple as that. So you can only achieve long-term goals if you are humble. Even dictators in history Realize, okay, I need to listen to my experts, I need to listen to the ministers who are specialized in it. But people that are proud, what is a proud individual? A proud individual is someone who doesn't want to admit they're vulnerable. Someone who refuses to admit they're a vulnerable creature, they are proud. Because they always seek some violent compensation to avoid the fact they're a vulnerable creature. We're all vulnerable creatures, human beings. We all are. So what's the problem with admitting you're a vulnerable creature? You are a vulnerable creature anyway. So why don't you just admit it? Proud people refuse to admit they're vulnerable because they're only into escaping when they get uncomfortable. People like that, they are not into being realistic. Because if they were realistic, would admit they're a vulnerable creature and didn't get along with other vulnerable creatures in harmony. Then they would communicate. But proud people, they do not communicate. They violate. They always seek some type of leverage over you they can use against you. Someone that's proud, when they meet you for the first time, they see you're a human being just like them. The first thing they're looking for is some weakness, some liability that they can use against you, just in case. I know it sounds creepy, but that's how they function. There's even this quote unquote self aware narcissist on YouTube who admitted this, that he always looks for something on someone else. Someone that's proud will never meet you and just be interested in you as a human being. They will always see you as a threat. They have to counter by having some leverage over you. Proud people are similar to reprobates. Not everyone that's proud is a reprobate. You even have some believers who are proud, unfortunately. But proud people, whether reprobate or not, they have this fear-based thinking. They have a fear-based thinking in which you always perceive others as a potential threat that you need to shut down. So such people cannot communicate because for communication you need to be humble and you need to be vulnerable to get along with other people. So for communication there must be mutual trust. But someone that's proud, they don't even trust themselves. Someone that's proud is paranoid. And because it's paranoia and no trust, there can be no communication. So they only use violence. Either use violence openly into your face if you think they can get away with it, or they use violence indirectly and hide behind the government or the legal system or behind the cult or whatever. That's how they do. So think about this. Proud people violate. Humble people communicate. Understand this. Mankind in this fallen state has a hard time communicating. That's why you even have university programs about communication. Why do you need to go to university to get experience and knowledge about communication? Why communication should be the number one thing we all do? But most people have difficulty with communication because they're not humble. So society is a movement in which adults escape. That's what society is. Society and community are not the same thing. I already explained it to you. Community is a population who are living there. Okay? Society is this fear-based movement that adults participate in to escape. That's what society is. So that also means that society, by default, is proud. Do you follow me? By the way, in the English language, there are two types of pride. You have pride of, man, I'm happy I'm part of this group. That's just the highest esteem you have towards your own group. Then you have pride, as is written in the Bible, this this attitude of violent compensation. Now, the pride I'm talking about now is not the high esteem you have for your own group, which is a healthy thing. I'm talking about this violent compensation that worldlings hold on to. All right? I need to clarify this because the English language tends to have double meanings for many words, okay? In other language, you don't have this. Okay, so society by itself is a proud movement. So there is no communication possible when it comes to society. Because society is a fear construct adults enact, and they teach their children to be part of this fear construct. When you are operating in fear, communication alone is not possible anymore because in fear, when you are afraid, you always seek to hide from danger. So when you are afraid, you tend to become proud because being afraid and being vulnerable don't go hand in hand. Okay? They don't go hand in hand. So if there is no communication possible in society, well, that explains why you have university degrees and this whole science about communication. I'm not saying you can't study communication, but the fact you have degrees about communication, they need to hire experts on communication for the workforce, what it shows you. You're even being stuck when it comes to getting along together. Now, understand this. Society can only function. So society, this fear movement of society can only produce the ease the masses want if society has agents to injure those who question it. Let me give an example. Let's say now you have a group of people that live somewhere, okay? And this group of people, they are a bit harsh towards their children, very harsh. If one of those children in the early teens questions, Mom, Dad, why are you talking so harsh towards me? Guess what? He'll get a slap. Everyone will condone it. Okay? In this case, the society has the ability to injure this teenager who's questioning the parent. But what if now you have a government structure in place that criminalizes hitting children? In this case, the child can call the cops anytime the parents try to hit him, and guess what? The parents are in check. You hear me? Why? Because the government has the police. They can arrest the parents, put them in prison, and now they're injured long term by being locked up in prison. So in this case, let's say you have a society in which the public thinks it's okay to hit children. Likely, the government will be lenient towards it too, because the government makes sure the public is at ease. But if you have a population that's really upset with hitting children, likely the government will not condone it. So let's say you have a community where they really are not okay with children being hit, and you come there and you slap your child. Now the community will not injure you directly. They'll call the cops on you, and the government will injure you on their behalf. You know what I mean? So understand this: society can only secure itself and generate its ease if they can injure its members. And guess what? Nobody wants to be injured. So the fear of being injured is the core motivation of why people collaborate society. People do not collaborate society because they need an income. Because you can have a job and still be part of society. That's possible. It's a bit difficult, but it's possible. People don't collaborate society because they're quote unquote lonely. Yes, people will feel lonely and they manage to form small communities and they're not part of society. The reason why people participate in thing called society, so they submit to all the toxic restrictions, which we call boundaries, is because they're afraid to be injured. But a lot of people will never tell you that that's the real reason why they go to the 9 to 5 job. They will never tell you that's the reason why they dress like how everyone wants. That's why they avoid certain people. But let me tell you, the fear of being injured is not the fear itself is pathological. But people being afraid of being injured is a realist. The threat is real. If you don't give in to society, society will either violate you directly by injuring you, or they will put you on a blacklist and they will socially exclude you, which ends up you can't get a job, you can't have income, you end up being homeless and dying, or they will press charge against you and use the criminal justice system against you. When the masses don't get the ease they crave out of you, you're in trouble. So the threat of being injured is real. But very few people will admit they're afraid that their fellow human beings may harm them if they're upset. As children, most of us, not all of us, thank God, but most of us have been groomed into accepting the community to violate us. Now, again, there's a difference in community and society. Society is a fear based movement, but it's a community participating in its fear based movement. All right? Just like Lissy said, proud people also have the habit to fight and argue all the time. It's like they're rabid dogs, absolutely. So understand, society cannot communicate because it's a movement based on fear, and you cannot communicate in fear. The Heavenly Father communicates. That's why every time the Heavenly Father would approach someone in the Old Testament time, or where a whole angelic being sent, the Heavenly Father would communicate with someone, they would always say, "Fear not, fear not, fear not," because you cannot communicate in a fearful state. And by the way, a fearful state will also break you down mentally and also on a physical level. Being in a fearful state will harm your physical health, your physical immune system, and your internal organs. So fear itself is destructive. Fear is demonic. You cannot communicate, and human beings are built to communicate. So if you're built to communicate, then you being in a fear state means you operate against your own humanity. Simple as that. That's why it's always there. Fear not, fear not, fear not. You get me? So, if it's clear that fear is not human, because it's not in our design to be fearful, if it's clear that fear is not from God, because it's written, God has not given us a spirit of fear, but a love, power, and a sound mind. That means fear shuts down power, love, and a sound mind. A sound mind means mental health. So that means whenever there's fear, there's no mental health. Whenever there's fear, there's no mental health. So society as a movement itself shuts down mental health. So when you take part in society, you become mentally ill by default because you cannot participate against your own human design and stay mentally sound. It's not possible. And fear is against your humanity. So if you participate in society, which is fear-based, you operate against your own humanity, your mental health is gone. I'm not saying you're completely lost mentally and you're schizophrenic and all over the place, but mental health will decline in you the moment you participate in society. Simple as that. This is how simple it is. So, if society cannot communicate, because society is an inhuman movement that most people just fall for, that means no solutions are possible also. So that means that society can only provide distractions. Society can never offer solutions. Again, remember, society relies on the ability to injure you. So violence is the only thing they have. And the government is there to regulate the violence of the public. And in modern day governments, since the 1600s, you have this structure that only the government is allowed to use violence, nobody else. This did not exist before the 16th century. Before the 16th century, you had the government, and you also had competing groups using violence all the time. Since the 16th century, you have this modern day idea that only the government is allowed to use violence. So the government has the monopoly on violence, so called, and they use the police force to enact this, and the military. But anyway, it comes down to society. Society is violent, and the human governments are there to regulate the violence of the mass. As simple as that. Yes, the government uses violence, but it's the public that's violent. So the public will only put up with a government that provides some ease, even if the ease is in a stressful way. No government can last on the earth unless the public perceives it as beneficial. It doesn't have to be beneficial for them, but what do people in the world consider beneficial? As long as they can escape and be at ease, that's what they consider beneficial. So let's say the government of the United States is destroying the United States finances. There's a lot of inflation in the United States. As long as people can go to the nightclub every weekend, or they can get drunk at the pub, or they can hormone here and there, that's their escape. So they're going to be upset with Joe Biden or whoever is president, but because they can still escape, they put up with it. The moment the United States government would shut down all the escapes, you will see the public become like rabid dogs, destroying everything. All right. So the government relies on the tolerance of the public. The government can only enact violence on the public as far as the public is willing to violate themselves. For example, in some countries, governments get away with being lenient towards child molesters. But there are areas, for example, Latin America, even in Eastern Europe, if there would be any political party anywhere who would even dare to be lenient towards child molesters, the people will pick up weapons and they will travel to the capital and a lynching would happen amongst the leaders. Simple as that. So this pedophilia propaganda that some organizations are doing carefully right now in the Western world, there are places in the world. Even try that. Just try. And the police is too late to arrest you. Because the public would have lynched you and cut your body in pieces already. The public is not willing to put up with children being so violated in their face. There's too much for them. In other areas, people are a bit more numb and it continues. So, understand this. Society insists on aggression because violence is aggressive by default. Society cannot communicate. Simple as that. So, because violence and communication don't go hand in hand, you cannot communicate violence. Understand this. If you let's say I have my bicycle, okay? I ride my bicycle and I ride to the dune areas and I stop at the parking lot, okay? Just to check my tires of my bicycle. So I want to check the tire of my bicycle, so I stop at the parking lot at a village. Let's say this guy comes out and say, "Sir, I live in this village, and this parking lot was built 30 years ago by my by our grandparents, and because you're standing here with your bicycle, you now owe us 30 euros. You can pay it right now, or you can pay it by working for us for 10 hours." I asked them, "Sir, who are you?" "I'm just standing here to check my tire and I'm going to move on." So they tell me, "Mister, I don't know what your name is, but because you stand here in our site, we are entitled to charge you $30. I tell them, "Sir, this is public area. It's not even private property. Do you think that will work?" No. But let's say they sent a man in a suit, not means a man in a uniform with a badge, and they tell me, "Sir, you get a ticket. You need to pay $30. What's the difference between just a commoner coming to me telling me to pay them $30 and someone with a badge in a uniform coming telling me I need to pay $30? What is the difference? Let me know in the live chat. What is the difference? Let me know. So I arrive in the village at the parking lot just to check my tire and to move on. A commoner approaches us. You need to pay us $30. Then the same scenario, but now someone with a badge and humor tells me I need to pay $30. They give me a ticket. What is the difference over here? Let me know in the live chat. I'll wait for your answers. I'll wait for just. I'll just wait for a minute. Okay, I got one answer. What does the red say? What is the actual difference over here? There is no difference. Thank you, Sherry. There is no difference. There's only a different way of doing it, but it's the same thing. In the first example, the community tries to extort me financially because I didn't take advantage of the people. I didn't take advantage of service. I was just there physically, and they just want to charge me out of the blue. If if someone comes with a gun or a knife and says you need to pay $30, now everyone say that's a criminal. Arrest him. But now, if a police officer comes forward and says you need to pay 30 and give you a ticket, what happens? In this case, the community authorized this community member who wears a uniform to do this. It's still the community extorting me, but now it's an authority figure doing it. And because an authority figure, the community can blame the authority figure. Well, he's going to give you a ticket, whatever. If there is a community paying taxes that pay the salary of that police officer, you know what I mean? There is no difference. Let's say you go to Italy, okay, and let's say you're in Italy, in the south of Italy, and you're throwing away your trash, and then you have the mafia coming towards you. The gangsters come towards say you need to pay us €300, so we because we're the one cleaning the trash over here. You can, but then let's say the mafia does that, but then you have a civil servant from the government giving you a letter saying you need to pay the city tax, €300. It's there to clean up the trash. The only difference is that the civil servant has a perceived entitlement from the public. The civil servant is authorized by the public; they put up with it. But people don't put up with the mafia doing it. Don't say the mafia has some business doing that. But it's the same thing happening. So, in both cases, violence is being used. You're being threatened with a bad outcome that will harm you. You're threatened with an injury if they don't get what they want out of you. Now, look, if there's a child molester who's luring at children and tell them, listen, get out of here, or else we will evict you by force. In this case, there's no violence. They're just using aggression to get the individual out. Well, that's justified because someone intended to do some harm to the community, and now you evict them in a forceful way. You don't beat them up, you don't stab them, you don't injure them, you just remove them forcefully. That would be different. But if you're at a location and you're not causing any harm, and worse, you're even contributing in a good way by being there, and they just want to take from you without an explanation, that's just violence. That is just violence, simple as that. Okay? In this case, the mafia setting its gangster up to you is not communicating, just being aggressive with a message. You pay the money or else. If the civil servant delivers the note to you from the bailiff, it's the same thing. You have to pay, or else we'll send the police to empty your house. You may go to jail for not paying the city tax. In both cases, you're threatened with an injury. With one, the mafia, we all can see what the heck is this. With the other one, we say, well, the city tax is there to make sure things work out well, so you do it for your own good. But the common excuse, it's the same thing. Now, look, if they would tell you, listen, Rashid, you live in a city, trash needs to be collected, so please contribute. If you don't contribute, I'm sorry, but we need to withhold some access to you from the community. In that case, it will be justified. They're not injuring me, they're not violating me, but they're just saying, listen, we will shut down your community involvement if you do not contribute, because you need to contribute over here. That will be different. In that case, I'm just told plainly, you need to contribute. If you don't contribute, you can't participate in this community. Simple as that. That's going to be the repercussion. But if they come with a threat, you have to give because, or else it may get worse, it's just violence. Because even if they don't actually enact the injury on me, the threat of the injury is already harming me mentally. Now, as a believer, you can counter this threat. Even as an unbeliever, you can do it, but unbelievers have a hard time doing it. But if people threaten you with injury, that alone can harm you psychologically, and psychological harm will end up in physical harm. But what I'm saying is that society has groomed all of us to think it's okay if their agents threaten us with injuries. And many of us got along with it because we had no other option to counter the threat. Now, the society offers you false escape, false solutions. Religion is a false solution because religion itself is violent. But religion can be used to escape some injuries in society. But then people think, well, religion is a good thing. No, it's not. Or they would offer the new age movement or some occult stuff. Paranormal charms will delay danger around you, but the danger is still there. Oh, and guess what? Paranormal charms will always expire and backfire on you. So people who do witchcraft and black magic, they can escape certain societal injuries, but they're still in the danger of being injured. The believer, however, can counter the violence of society and not only escape injury, but they can overrule and bypass injury. That's something the believer can do. That's why Jesus said, I give you power to trample on scorpions and serpents and the whole camp of the enemy, and nothing shall by no means hurt you. This outcome, not shall by no means hurt you, will only happen when you walk in that power wisely. So, only believers can counter society successfully. If you're not a believer, you can't do it. If you're not a believer, you can become a pagan and you can have relief from society's injuries. There's all the injuries that society can inflict on you, but you're not free from it. You're not safe from it. So the warlock who uses charms to avoid being violated or avoid being injured, yes, ease daily life. He can even make money at ease, but he's still under the threat of either having his license revoked or being shut down or arrested or all of that. The believer is in society and they externally get along with basic practical things of society, for example, traffic signs, traffic rules, use the same language, use the same currency. But the believer, meanwhile, is countering the violence of society. So the believer can get away with a lot of stuff that other people cannot. And if society goes hard after the believer, the negative tension of society itself will destroy the whole society. Why? Because the believer counters the violence of society, and after the believer counters it, the dark electric charge in the Earth's atmosphere, the society is acting on that believer, will shoot back on the society members, and society ends up injuring and damaging itself over and over again. I already explained it. So is it clear to you now why the world, or you can say society, hates real believers? Society has no problem with you as a believer if you're stuck in church, or if you're stuck in capitalism, or you're stuck in any type of escapism. They're okay with that because they can still injure you and get away with it. But the moment you are a believer who truly walks in the resurrection power of Christ, oh my goodness, what can he do about you? Look, even unbelievers get in trouble with society if they gain too much for leverage. That's why when you're making a lot of money in the world as an unbeliever, the public begins to turn on you. Why? Because you having all those finances enables you to counter what they're doing. If you rely on your 9 to 5 job for your income, then you can be fired. If you're fired, you're homeless. So for you to work, the employer must not be aroused by your presence. If people want to shut you down, the only thing you have to do is arouse your employer with phone calls, and your employer is under such pressure will fire you, so this business is not harmed, and guess what? You're homeless. So if you are relying on a job, they can always shut down your job. Either they put the employer under pressure to fire you, or they will sabotage your sleeping pattern so you can't function at work and you're fired. So if they can do that. But if you are expanding financially and they begin to get upset with you, you can just move to another place. It's over. And guess what? When you do that, you counter their negativity. Now the negativity in the Earth's atmosphere shoots back at them. They don't want that. Society is only okay with you if you are a disposable option that can injure at will. If you are a disposable option that society can injure at will, they're okay with you. The moment you develop some type of leverage to counter society's violence, there's a problem with you, even as an unbeliever. All right? So, society does not communicate. Society is aggressive in its violence. And let me tell you, violence is not okay. Now, if you're walking down the street and someone jumps on you and you knock them out just to keep them off of you, okay, you use physical force on them to knock them off of you. If you do that and you walk away or run away, okay, that's different. But if they jump on you and you end up beating them up all the time, okay, that's violence. Because you could just knock them out one time to get them off you and you moved on. So violence is when you surrender to a threat and escalate on the threat just to be left alone. That's violence. Violence is never okay. Using force in dangerous situations just to rescue someone or just to avoid further harm, that's different. But that's not violence. It's just using force constructively. Or let's say now you have a child and you force your child to eat vegetables. Because you know if the child doesn't eat vegetables, they're going to miss out on vitamins and minerals. You tell your child you get no, you're not going to watch any TV, don't play your video games. If you don't eat your vegetables, okay, that's just discipline to force child to realize, you know what, you need to comply. This is for your own good. Eat the vegetables. If your child doesn't go to bed on time, you can say, okay, then you're going to go and play outside for now. To some extent, you can do that. But if you begin to scream at your child, pick up a belt and let her show, you don't hit them with the belt, but show them the belt, put them there on the table. The child figures out, oh crap, that belt can be used against me. That weapon can be used against me if let me eat my vegetables. Now that's violence. Okay? A lot of parents, a lot of adults don't understand the difference between discipline and violence. They don't understand the difference between the two. If your child is using some cuss words, you can tell them, hey, listen, watch your mouth, because some people may get upset with what you're saying and they may lose it on you. That's being constructive, because cuss words in themselves, they have no negative meaning. It's the meaning we give onto them. If you're constructive towards your child, say, okay, don't use such language, because in real life, this can backfire on you. That's being constructive towards your child. But if you yourself are not delivered and you get upset because they use a word that you consider forbidden, now you lash out against them, don't talk to me like that, I'm your parent, that's violence. Because who are you that you can just get upset like that just because you pay rent somewhere? A lot of people don't understand the difference in discipline and violence. A lot of people don't. But whether you understand the difference or not doesn't matter. Violence is violence. Look, let's say, for example, let me use the Haitian Revolution as an example, because I'm part Haitian, because I'm from Haitian ancestry. During the Haitian Revolution, you had this believer, Toussaint Louverture, who wrote down a constitution for Haiti and who declared independence, and he even was about to negotiate with Napoleon in France for Haiti's independence. Now, Napoleon, at the other hand, he sent whole fleet to the island Hispaniola to shut down the whole independence and to bring back the institution of slavery. Now, Toussaint Louverture may have been a bit naive, thinking, "Oh, let me just go to France. I can let me just go away with the soldiers to France, and then I can figure it out." No, Toussaint Louverture ended up in prison in France, ended up dying over there. But here's the thing: when the French soldiers arrived on Haiti, there was this other guy, Dessalines, who was into black magic and all of that. He realized, hold on a minute, these people are not willing to just accept the fact we don't want slavery anymore. We don't want to be enslaved anymore. They insist in keeping us down to preserve their colonial ease. And guess what? When the negotiations and attempts of the Toussaint Louverture didn't work out, Dessalines took over and said, "Okay, you want to use violence on us? We're gonna use violence too." A whole massacre happened, and Haiti's independence was secured. Now, am I happy that it went that way? No. I would have preferred it would happen to some virtuous way, through the diplomacy and all of that. In this case, was the violence on the Dessalines justified? No, violence never justified. What was justified was they were taking action against what the French colonial powers wanted to do. Okay? So a reaction is required. And you reacting to preserve something good is justified. But it doesn't mean that the way you do it is justified. You get me? So I'm happy the Haitian Revolution happened. But it doesn't mean I'm happy the way it happened. You get me? Look, there's one thing I want you to understand over here. One thing you need to accept. When society has decided that they're going to violate a group of people, society will not change. The public will not change their mind about violating those people. Those people either have to counter them supernaturally by walking by faith, and guess what? When they counter them supernaturally, the unrest in the Earth's atmosphere towards people are going to shoot back. So now that society begins to explode on one another. So it's still going to turn on violence, but it won't be violence by the believers, it'll be violence by the violent people themselves. So the believers cannot be blamed. Or if they're not believers, they will either have to make concessions at their own expense, or they use counter violence to shut it down. But of course, counter violence will lead to other difficulty. Just look at Haiti. Violence came to haunt Haiti afterwards also, till this day. So just understand, if there is organized oppression going on, it's not going to just end because you asked to. You can't ask your oppressor to let you go, and they will let you go. They won't do it. You can't ask people to stop being negative and stop escaping. They won't do it. You have to force them to face reality. So you can't be polite and quote unquote respect towards their will, because the will is negative. So if there's a protest going on and it turns violent, we tend to say, oh, violent protest. A lot of people had this issue with Black Lives Matter because they say, oh, those protests become violent. Look at this thing. Okay, look. By the way, I'm not a supporter of that movement, because the movement Black Lives Matter, it has a lot of satanic influence in it, so I don't understand with that. The message they had, Black Lives Matter, of course I agree with that. I'm black myself. By the way, all human lives matter, so just put it out there. But all of you know that about me, that all human lives matter. But the thing is, people got upset that it turned violent. My thing was, what do you expect if you have a system, if you have a tyrannical system in place that people refuse to admit is tyrannical? If there are people saying we have enough of it, guess what? It's going to be a clash that might turn violent. So understand this: during this lifetime, anytime you want improvement, you will encounter violence. Now, the best thing is not to use counter violence and to be part of the misery. Okay, that's the best thing to do. But for worldlings who don't have the resurrection part of Christ, violence becomes an option when you're about to be killed. Because look, if someone decides to send a military to your village to kill a portion of you, to scare you off into submission, either you lay low and end up injuring, killing your wives and your children, or you use some other means to deter it from happening. Now, there are examples in the Word in which people use supernatural means to deter physical violence from militaries that happen in the Bible. But not everyone has that to the disposal. If you have a situation that people send a military or a militia to hurt your community, but your community picks up weapons so the militias to deter it away, okay, I'm happy there's something about it. That was what I'm happy about. But I preferred it would happen in a different way, in a more Christ-centered way. You get me? George Soros. Okay, let's not talk about him. If the last name Soros, Greek sounding last name, is the last name he chose to worship Apollo. So if the last name is occultic, but anyway. And George is derived from a nickname, the ancient Greek nickname for Satan, Georgios, which means the farmer, something like that. But okay, a lot of believers are so invested in society's violence. If you would even tell them they're violent, say, no, I'm not violent. I'm just standing on the word of God. I'm just saying it's a sin. Listen, if someone is not operating God's sexual blueprint, but doing the opposite, why are they doing it? Are they doing it because they worship the Baphomet, the devil worshippers? Okay, if that's the case, they reprobate. Let them go. Or are they in that confused state because of neglect of the community? If someone is dysfunctional by not being in God's sexual blueprint, and it's because of neglect of the community, if you come and say, "Oh, what you're doing is a sin, it's a sin, you're going to hell," what are you doing? You're injuring that individual psychologically. They've already been injured by their own communities through neglect. That's why they ended up in such a confused state. Now you come and blame them for being so confused. That's violence. But a lot of believers say, "Well, I'm just saying what's written in the Bible." Listen, you use the Bible to injure them, to feel good about yourself. It's violence. You should you should tell them, listen, the lifestyle you're in, are you sure about it? Because sometimes it's not that constructive. Show them scientific facts why their lifestyle is not constructive. And show them God's blueprint, how better God's blueprint is, and how worthwhile it is. And live out God's blueprint yourself. That's how you do it. But just go out and say, "Oh, it's a sin, you're going to hell," and just slap them psychologically all the time. I'm sorry, but that's violence. Okay? But they will say, "We stand the word of God." No, you're not. If someone tells you that they don't want to deal with their parents anymore because the parents are horrible, and you tell them, "No, you have to honor your mother and father. It's written in the Bible. It's a commandment." Listen, you're being violent. Let me tell you why you're violent. If this individual was severely injured by his or her parents, and now as adults are dealing with psychological issues because of how their parents mismanaged them, listen, those parents are dishonorable creeps that should be avoided. Simple as that. You coming with a Bible verse how it should be just to make yourself feel good that you are on the right side. It's just you taking advantage of them just to get some pride tickled inside of you. Now using the Bible as a stake, psychological stake on them, just to shut them up. There was even this woman on YouTube who said, "If you talk bad about your parents, I will block you. I won't deal with you because it's against the Bible. It's against God." I was thinking, lady, you should even be on YouTube saying such nonsense. You have every right to decline honor and decline interaction and involvement with someone who systematically and consistently violated you and neglected you, whether they are your parents or not. And anyone who tells you you have to talk good and give honor to people who on purpose neglected you over and over again, I'm sorry, but such an individual is operating in a satanic way. Simple as that. I don't care if they're a believer or not. So a lot of believers are so used to church violence that they don't even realize that they're being violent. That's right, Liché. Liché says, "I find it interesting that when the same people that tell you to honor your parents, why don't they go and live with those people and then see what they say?" It's true. I mean, listen, no child just turns on their parents just like that. Listen, they're criminals in prison. They're violent criminals in prison who didn't turn on their parents. We even feel sorry for how they ended up, how they embarrassed their parents. You know what I mean? So if people don't just turn their parents just like that, they don't. If you have parents who are horrible creatures, the community knew they were horrible. Why didn't the community keep them in check? So the community violated you too by letting your parents on the loose towards you. And now that you're an adult dealing with all these psychological problems, you have this individual from church telling you, "Well, you need to honor them." Okay. You tell them to honor this narcissist over here. Okay, please go and live with her or go and live with him. And tell me how you're going to like it. Oh, so you're not willing to live with them because they're horrible. Why should I do it? Yeah, it's written in the Bible. I'm sorry, but that's retarded attitudes. And believers have to stop this bullshit. The Bible is a reference to Christ. We follow in Christ. We don't follow the Bible. The Bible is a reference to Christ, both Old and New Testament. Okay? It's a reference to Christ that we ought to follow. But, not but, because it's a reference to Christ, we have to use as a reference and not as a book with all the answers to life. A lot of believers treat the Bible as a magical book that answers all the problems in life. Are you kidding me? No. Jesus is the answer. Following his lead. This is what leads to solutions, not following the Bible. So, understand the following. Anytime you're breaking through, anytime society cannot put boundaries on you anymore, anytime they can't bind you with restrictions anymore, they get upset, they turn violent on you. It happened to Jesus, it happened with the apostles, it happened to the prophets of old. It will also happen to you. You have to be ahead of the violence. Don't use counter violence just to shut down their violence, because counter violence is still violence, and that counter violence can also be used against you, and that counter violence can harm you too. Counter their violence by operating in the resurrection part of Christ. That's what you need to do. That's the only way to stay safe and sane long term on the earth. Okay? But the most important thing is you need to admit it's violence. Look, some people aren't even aware they're violent towards you. It doesn't mean if someone is violent towards you and they're not even aware of it because that's how they were trained. Listen, it doesn't mean they're evil people, but it means that they're operating in a destructive way towards you. If someone is violent towards you, but they're not even aware they're violent or that they're enabling violence, it means that those people are quite disturbed. If they're not reprobate, they're not evil people, it means they're quite disturbed and it needs help. In that case, you politely remove yourself from that individual, you lower and end the lower contact and end the interaction and force them to look for help. So they can understand that they're acting in a violent way, that it's not acceptable, it's not productive, and need to improve. Just understand, all of us were taught that violence is a good option in case you don't get what you want. All of us were taught this. All of us were taught if you want to be left alone and people don't leave you alone, you have a right to become violent just to quote unquote protect yourself. That's what we were taught. I'm sorry, but even the court system, even the criminal justice system doesn't accept this. Quote unquote defend yourself and you end up in prison and the judge will tell you, listen, you could have walked away from that situation. Why did you walk away? Why did you stay to defend yourself? You could have walked away. And it's true. So society teaches you to stand up for yourself and defend yourself. And when you do it, now it's a problem too. Listen, you need to accept what you're dealing with. Society is a fear-based movement. It's violent. It cannot communicate. It can only use aggression to enforce its stupid will on you. If you have nothing to counter it, you'll have to cope with it or you have to be crushed by it. If you don't have anything to counter violence, you'll either be crushed by it or you have to cope with it. Now, people in the world, they're either crushed by violence or they cope with it. That's what pagans do. It's believers that can counter violence, and we do it ahead of time. All right? But that can only happen if we obey what Heavenly Father is telling us to do. All right? So, are there any questions about this topic? Please let me know now, please. Please let me know. Lisha, you're telling the truth. Lisha is saying that the natural vibrancy of the earth is peace. That's why when you operate in peace and agreement with Christ, you will be ahead because you are going with the waters of life. Absolutely. The worldlings operate against the earth because violence is against the earth. If you operate against the earth and I have someone operating in harmony with how the earth is built, guess what? The one operating in harmony with how the earth is built will always be ahead of you. Simple as that. Listen, we're not naive over here. We're not dumb. We know that a lot of human beings will continue to excuse violence because they want to face themselves. Either they will continue to do violence towards you, or they will enable and promote violence against you because they want to face themselves. You have a lot of people like that, and that's why we need to counter them. Okay, we're not going to back them to change because they won't change. We're not going to fight them to force them to change. We're going to counter what they're doing. Simple as that. And when we counter it, when and other shoots back at them, the destruction will be on them, not us. Simple as that. All right. Are there any questions? Let me know in the live chat, please. hmm Aaron, let me comment on that. Aaron says the disturbed type of individual, not knowing they're operating violently, probably is instead with being told truth about it. Well, sometimes you need to discern this. If someone is, for example, I had this believer, I was talking with him. He has a daughter now. His wife wasn't pregnant yet. He was saying, well, with children, sometimes you just smack a little bit to teach them discipline. I told them, hold on, dude. What did you say? They just tell me if a child gets too difficult, it's okay to hit them to calm them down. They just told me that. He said, yeah, shit, sometimes you just have to. Sometimes you have to be told respect. This, oh, no, 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 no. Dude, if your wife is a bit moody at work and your employer is upset with it and he begins to slap your wife or hit your wife with the belt, would you be okay with that? He said, of course, absolutely not. Okay. So the employer of your wife using a weapon on your wife, you wouldn't be okay with it. And you're both adults. Your wife can run away and escape. A child cannot escape. So why it's okay to use a weapon or your bare hands on a child? And the believer realized, you know what, Rashid, you're right. This is stupid. So some people are how do I say? Some people are just strongly deceived. They're not bad people, they're not evil people, but they're just messed up mentally. You have to show them, hold on a minute. Showing them, it doesn't mean attack them and tell them you're effing stupid hitting a child. What type of monster are you? Know, you're not attack them. You have to show them, hold on. Are you sure about this? Show them what they just said, show them how they act, and show them how dysfunctional it is, and force them, okay, you need to be better. Okay? Strange thing, I often ask people like that. Oh, you think it's okay to hit a child because children are annoying? Okay. So if you're annoying, it's okay for me to slap you then? Say, whoa, Rashid. Or so if it's okay to hit a child, then it's also okay for the employer to beat you up. Then it's also okay for the landlord to violate you sexually also. If having a leverage over someone means it's all right for you to violate them, that means anyone has the right to violate you with leverage. That means people out there joining gangs with guns, it's also justified then. See what I mean? Some people, you just show them the facts, they get shocked, they begin to process it, but eventually you know what, you're right, they improve. Other people just want to escape, they end up reprobate. If they end up reprobate, it's not on you, it's them insisting on destruction. In that case, you shake those out your feet and you move on. If they do that, Aaron, just shake those out your feet and move on. Praise the Lord. Okay? All right. There are no other questions here. Thank you all for being here. Keep coming with Christ. Be at peace, and I'll see you next live stream. Shalom. God is good all the time.